So you can watch the video, right? So welcome to online tutorial on microwaves and antennas. We are going to module 4, which is about array of isotropic sources, wherein we want to study about how two radiating sources kept near to each other, how the radiations produced by them will interfere. So maybe all of you may be knowing the Young's double slit experiment. So today we'll start with a video on Young's double slit experiment. So all of you can watch this.
What is light?
What is light? What is light? That's a good question, isn't it? What is light?
Isn't it an element?
Light is brightness, I guess.
We have auras,
We all have auras.
which are light.
Yes, they are.
It lights up the room. It makes it not dark.
What's the difference between blue light and red light?
The colour.
It goes in your eyes and then you see stuff.
They range from white to red to orange to green. It's like the chakras of your body.
Can you see my aura?
No, not particularly right now.
Is it too bright out?
It's very sunny out here today.
Does that make it harder to see someone's aura?
Not necessarily.
If I was to explain it to a blind person, right,
Yeah.
it would be the difference. You see nothing whatsoever as a blind person, whereas I see things in front of me.
To be fair, the question of what light is not an easy one. For centuries, the greatest minds in science debated this issue. In the late 1600s, Newton proposed that light was a stream of particles, or corpuscles. He proposed this in his treatise Optics. But at the same time, a Dutch physicist named Huygens proposed that light was a wave. And this debate raged on until it was settled by the experiment I've recreated today, Thomas Young's double slit experiment. To make sure I got the experiment right, I went to the original source. With the help of Brady Heron, I managed to get into the vault underneath the Royal Society in London. There I found Thomas Young's handwritten notes from 1803.
I brought into the sunbeam a slip of a card, about 1/30th of an inch in breadth, and observed its shadow, either on the wall or on other cards held at different distances. Besides the fringes of colors on each side of the shadow itself was divided by similar parallel fringes of smaller dimensions. Wow.
This is an experiment so simple that you could make it at home, and yet so fiddly that I have never seen it before done with sunlight.
I was thinking about doing it in a box, like a fridge box.
And you can take it out on the street.
Taking it out on the street.
Could I possibly interview you guys for about a minute? We're doing a science experiment. I have here is an empty box. And this is a little eyepiece where we can look in, and this is a hole. And I'm gonna place this slide above that hole. And if you look closely, you'll see that there's two openings. Very narrow openings side by side. It's a double slit. Now before we have a look, we need to tilt it towards the sun a little bit. So we want the sun to hit this double slit directly. What are we gonna see on the bottom
Well,
of
the
the
obvious
box?
thing you think you're going to see is you're going to see two lines.
Two lines on the bottom of the box. Two bright bands.
Two little lines.
Yeah.
I think it'll be one line instead of two.
I could expect to see the whole box lit up.
That'll probably be a kaleidoscope of some sort.
A bunch of colors.
Probably, yeah.
Rainbow, different colours.
So, I think all of you are seeing, right, what's happening. So he just made an apparatus to demonstrate Young's double slit experiment with sunlight, right? So just remember, sunlight is actually, it's not monochromatic. It has different frequencies in it, right? It's composed of different colors, right? Violet to red, right? So different colors. So he's trying to demonstrate this Young's double slit experiment with sunlight, right? And any idea what will be seen? Right, so basically he has a dark box. On top of that, a small opening where he has kept a double slit. Right, on some polarized sort of glass, he made two slits. So what will be seen if someone look into the box? What is expected to be seen? Any idea? Any guess? You already know this. You have studied this in 12th. But even then, yeah, Suvira, you raised your hand. Or by mistake you raise your hand, you put it down, right? So we'll watch, right? We'll see what is going to happen.
There, have a look. You expected to see kind of one line. Is that what you see?
No.
I see dots.
How many?
It's one circle.
Well, there's one in the middle strongest, two either side.
The two on the outside are multicolored, and the one in the middle is just white.
It's kind of a rainbow.
The rainbow of colour as well.
Quite a few colours and lots of little dots.
Like there are more dots appearing.
I think I can even see more dots spreading along. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I can see tons of dots now. Not tons, but I can see dots spreading across that way.
Either side.
Yeah, definitely.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that's incredible. And that's just nothing else apart from
Two slits.
two slits.
Now that you have seen what happens when sunlight is passed through two slits and when they interact with each other, right? So I don't think I need to give you explanation for this, right? So same thing if you do using a monochromatic light or a light having a single frequency, you can see fringes, right? Or you can see actually what bands of bright and dark regions, right, on the screen. That is because the light, so right, these two slits act as independent point sources, right, and light emanating from these two will interfere with each other. When they are getting added up in phase, there will be maxima or there will be bright region, and when they are getting added up out of phase, there will be actually what dark region, that is the minima, and in between you will have actually what the areas of different intensity. In this case, the two sources are of same intensity, right? In this case, two sources are of same intensity and they are of actually what same magnitude and phase. If I'm telling in terms of math, I should tell the wave emanating from two slits are of same magnitude and phase. So depending upon the path difference, right? So where and all you will get maximas if the, of course, right, at as these two light sources are separated by some distance, right, they, to reach a given point, they'll have to take different paths. So the length of the path may be different. So I'll call it path difference. So that path difference actually decides whether they get added up in phase or out of phase, right? So the basic thing which I want you people to keep in mind is it depends upon the separation and also the magnitude and phase of light. For instance, one of the light sources very intense and other one is very light, then what will happen is when they are getting added out of phase, there may not be complete cancellation, right? So those things also you should keep in mind, right? So this experiment, I just wanted you people to recollect it. You might have seen the better demonstrations in your 12th or whatever, right? The idea is electromagnetic waves, right, they will interfere, right? They'll interfere, and when they are getting added up in phase, there will be maxima. When they are getting added up out of phase, there will be minima. That is the basic idea which I wanted to give. Now the same thing, right, he's demonstrating it in water with two sources of actually okay, ripples, right? So we'll see that. We'll come back to our discussion.
Now there's a slight complication, which is that sunlight is composed of many different colors and they have different wavelengths. So obviously they're going to meet up at slightly different points. And that's what caused the rainbowing effects as we go further from the central maximum. You saw the ones to the right were slightly colored.
Yeah,
that's
it's
because
burgundy.
the reds are going to meet up at different places than the blues.
And that's all that makes the colour differences, is different.
Light from one slit met destructive interference. Where they meet up, peaks with start getting an interesting, create ripples with a single source. They travel out with circular wavefronts. Nothing particularly surprising there. But if I add a second source of ripples, then we start getting an interesting pattern. This pattern is created by the ripples from the two sources interacting with each other. Where they meet up, peaks with peaks and troughs with troughs, the amplitude of the wave is increased. That's what we call constructive interference. But if the peak from one wave meets up with the trough from the other, then we get destructive interference and there's basically no wave there. And this is exactly what was happening with the light. When the light from one slit met up, peaks with peaks and troughs with troughs, they constructively interfered and produced a bright spot. But If the trough from the wave from one slit met up with the peak of the wave from the other slit, they would destructively interfere and you wouldn't see any light there. It's light cancelling itself out.
So it's basically the same as like having 2 drops of water fall in a swimming pool.
That's
Get
right.
exactly the same
And then
pattern.
they go and overlap. As this ripple overlaps with those.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Right. So maybe quickly 2 minutes. Right. I would like you to someone from this group. Please tell me what you have seen. Right, and its explanation. Whom should I ask? Maybe I should ask Samarth. Can you please unmute if you don't mind? Samarth Shetty. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So Samarth, can you just quickly just summarize what we have seen?
Young's double slit experiment.
Yeah. Okay. That's it. That's more than sufficient, right? No need of explanation. Yeah. Fine. So yeah. Thank you, Samarth. Like yeah. So what we have seen just now was right 2 sources of radiation. If the radiation interfering, there will be actually what minima and maxima. Similarly, if we use 2 antennas, right, the radiation produced by those 2 antennas will 2 or more, right? Maybe we are going to discuss about arrays of antennas, right? So far in first module, in third module, we have discussed about the basic parameters of an antenna, right? What does antenna radiation pattern, beam width, right, radiation efficiency, aperture, effective height, and all those stuffs, right? And in this particular module, we'll be discussing about antenna arrays. So for that, we'll consider each antenna as a point source, right? We'll consider each antenna as a point source. So can anyone tell me what is a point source? What can be a point source? Right, a point source, it is nothing but if, for instance, right, if you are observing sun or star at a very large distance, right, even though they are very huge, they are very humongous, right, you can assume them as a point source, or the entire thing you can assume to be actually what confined to a single point, right? So that is actually a point source. Right, that is actually a point source. So a point source, it's not actually what it's something which is a point, but if you are observing any source, it can be a light source or it can be a source of radiation or whatever. If you are observing it from a very large distance compared to the dimension, and even actually what compared to the dimension of the source, you can assume the entire radiation is emanating from a single point. Right, so that is called a point source. That is called a point source. So in this particular module, first part of both module will be assuming the source of light to be actually what a point source, right? We'll be assuming the source of light to be actually a point source, right? And then yeah, with that we'll start with the discussion. Right, we'll start with the discussion. 1 second. So before we move ahead, right? So before we move ahead with say module 4, right? I want to tell you what is actually this difference between far field and near field. So I missed out actually one small topic in module 3, right? One small topic in module 3 that we'll discuss. Then we'll move on to module 4, right? Okay. So the topic is far field and near field. Far field and near field, or antenna field zones. Right, antenna field zones. Suppose you have an antenna, right? You have an antenna, right? And you just consider its length is equal to L, right? Suppose some antenna whose length is L. If you observe, you can actually divide this antenna field zones into 2 regions, right? You can divide this antenna field zones into 2 regions, right? So one region, right? One region actually which is, if I measure the distance from the antenna as R, right? So the region where R is less than 2 times L square by lambda, where lambda is the operating wavelength and L is the maximum dimension of antenna. So I'll write here L is maximum dimension of antenna, right? Maximum dimension of antenna. So this antenna can be anything. It can be a wire antenna, or it can be a dish antenna, or it can be an array of antenna, or it can be a huge antenna station, right? Whatever it is, right? If you can divide the field around the antenna into two regions, right? And the boundary is actually what? The distance 2L square by lambda. If R is less than 2L square by lambda, we can call it actually what? Near field, right? If R is less than 2L square by lambda, we can call it as actually what? Near field, right? And if R is greater than 2L square by lambda, 2L square by lambda, or you can call it greater than or equal to 2L square by lambda, it is actually what? Far field, right? So you can divide the field zone around an antenna into two fields, that is near field and far field. So say if this distance R is 2L square by lambda, right? So this circle which I have shown is actually what? It's a boundary between, it is boundary between near and far field and far field, right? It's the boundary between near and far field. And one more thing, this near field is also called as actually what? Fresnel field, Fresnel. Please correct me if I'm pronouncing it wrong. If Fresnel or Fresnel field, right? And far field is also known as actually what? Sorry, Fraunhofer field, right? So this is a almost right. Every alternative year they used to ask this for exam, right? Write short note on antenna field zone. So what you should write is a field zone of an antenna can be divided into two principal regions. One is near field, that is near to an antenna, and the other one is far field, that is actually what? Far away from antenna. So if you ask me which is a boundary, right? So you can consider a fictitious boundary of radius 2L square by lambda separating the near field and far field. So now what is a big deal about near field and far field, right? So maybe we'll have a comparison, right? We'll have a comparison. So I'll write near field and far field, right? Near field and far field, right? So near field, you know, it's also known as Fresnel zone. Far field also known as Fraunhofer zone, right? So first thing itself is actually what? R less than 2L square by lambda, right? Here R greater than 2L square by lambda. That is actually what? That is how these are distinguished, right? Then in near field, longitudinal component of E or H field are prominent, right? Prominent or significant, right? Longitudinal components. But in far field, longitudinal component is not there, right? In far field, the measurable field components, I'll write here measurable field components, that is E and H, E or H, are transverse to the radial direction, right? And in far field, power flow is completely radially outward. power flow is completely radially outward, right? But so what I can write is, in far field, the electromagnetic wave is transverse electromagnetic, right? Power is flowing in this direction, right? Electric field may be in this direction and magnetic field may be what, in this direction. So they are mutually perpendicular and in turn perpendicular to actually what, the power. So power density vector will be like this, magnetic field will be like this, and electric field will be like this. For instance, electric field can be along theta and magnetic field can be along actually what, phi, and the power density, power flow is along actually what, r, along the direction of ar cap, right? So that is actually what a transverse electromagnetic. But in this case, right, power flow is not complete. In the case of a near field, in the case of a near field, power flow is not completely radial, right? Why? Because longitudinal component, there can be electric field components along direction of r as well. Electric field and magnetic field component along the direction of wave propagation also will be there. So power flow is not completely radial. So that is actually what near field. But whereas in far field, power flow is radially outward, and we can assume the electromagnetic wave is transverse electromagnetic wave, right? So then one more very important difference is radiation pattern. So if you near field radiation pattern is a function of distance or shape of radiation pattern, I should write, right? Shape of radiation pattern, right? It's a function of distance in near field, right? So but shape of radiation pattern is independent of distance from antenna, right? So that is actually what, so that's why. So normally, right, all are right. So whatever radiation patterns, everything we plotted, I used to tell it is far field. Why? Because we can assume in far field the electromagnetic wave is transverse electromagnetic, no tangential component of electric field. The entire power flow, we can assume it is radially outward, right? So we can assume this antenna, right, is radiating from a single point radially outwards, right? So in detail about actually what pattern of dipole and all those stuffs, I'll just give you a demonstration when I discuss about dipole. But for the time being, this is what you have to keep in mind, right? So this is what is Fresnel and Fraunhofer field. So in some textbook, actually what they have further divided this near field into two, right? Active and reactive and all. But we don't want that. As per our prescribed textbook, this would be more than sufficient. So this R is equal to 2L square by lambda or 2D square by lambda. That is actually the boundary between near and far field. So near field, it is actually what, it's completely undisciplined. Electric field and magnetic field can take any direction. It's any random direction. It's not completely transverse electromagnetic, right? So we can't tell power is radiating away from the antenna. We can't tell that. But in far field, you can tell power is radiating radially outward. So, and one more thing, when I say power is radiating, it's actually a blunt usage. Normally, not power, it is energy what is radiating. Power is actually what, time rate of change of energy. You already know that. But we are used to it, right? Power radiated, right? So it's not power, actually energy is radiating, but I'll tell actually what power radiated, right? Not only me, in almost all the standard textbook, they are using it, admitting that is a blunt usage, right? So that is what is near field and far field. So it is 2D square by lambda, that is the boundary, but D is the dimension of antenna. That is why in lab when you will be doing experiments, so you will have a transmitting antenna and receiving antenna, right? So we have to make sure the separation between the antenna is minimum actually what, around 20 centimeter. Why? Because the antenna may have some dimension D, right? So antenna may have some dimension, say 5 centimeter or something, or 10 centimeter, right? So suppose let's take an example. The antenna which you're using, right? The antenna which you're using in lab, right? It may have a length L is equal to 10 centimeter. And if it is operating at a wavelength equal to, say, at a frequency equal to 2.5 gigahertz, can you tell me what is the boundary between far field and near field? What is 2L square by lambda? It is 2 into 10 into 10 power minus 2 the whole square divided by lambda is, what is 2. Lambda corresponding to 2.5 gigahertz? 3 into 10 power 8 divided by 2.5 into 10 power 9. Can anyone tell me this? This is very, very important, right? So in lab, you have to set the minimum distance. You can't keep the antenna too close to each other. This is the reason, right? Minimum distance should be greater than 2L square by lambda. So what is lambda corresponding to 2.5 gigahertz? Can anyone tell me? Please. I'm waiting for a response. 0.12 meter, right? So that is 0.12 meter. Thank you, Savan, right? So it is 0.12 meter, right? And what is 2L square by lambda? So what will be this? What is 2L square by lambda? For an antenna of length 10 centimeter operating at 2.5 gigahertz, what should be the minimum distance for far field, or boundary between far field and near field? Yeah, Savan, can you please calculate and tell? If you can unmute and tell, yeah, 0.1667, which means actually what it's approximately? It's approximately 16.67 centimeter, right? Is it 16.67 centimeter, Savan? Can you please unmute and tell? Right, 0.166, yeah, it's 16.6. So minimum you should keep, yeah, minimum you should keep it at a distance of 16.67. So what we'll do is we'll start taking measurement from actually what, 20 centimeter. We won't keep it even 16.67, right? So this, it's not a very clearly defined boundary, right? So it should be greater, much greater compared to 16.67. Of course, we don't want to use antenna if you have to transmit something actually what, at a distance of 16.67 meter. We want to use antenna if the distance is too large, right? So minimum separation you will keep some 20 centimeter there. This is how you will calculate actually what far field. So this can be a Viva question also for your ATCOM lab, right? Why the minimum separation is this much, right? On what basis you'll decide near field and far field and all those steps. I hope it's clear, right? So I just wanted to tell that, right? I just wanted to tell that. So that is far field and near field. All of you could take down the points which I mentioned. Can I move on to the next topic now? Yeah, okay, thank you. Right. So now we'll move on to the next topic. That is, we'll move on to module 4. Right. So module 4 is about antenna arrays. Right. Module 4 is about, one second, I'll just give you the syllabus as such. Right. Module 4 is about point sources and arrays and dipole. Right. I'll paste the syllabus as such here so that you'll be able to. Right. So this is what we have to learn in module 4. Right. So point sources and arrays and electric dipole. If you see here, right, the power patterns, power theorem, radiation intensity, field patterns, right, phase patterns, these things we have already discussed, right? So I merged it with actually what module 3. I thought it should be right. So in module 3, it was only actually what mostly the basic problems only they were solving, but we solved many problems and we discussed these things in detail. So we don't want to touch upon these things. Power theorem you already know, radiation intensity you know, what is field pattern you know, and maybe about phase pattern I'll discuss a bit, right, about phase pattern. So but nothing much, it's just 1 or 2 line I'll tell at the end, right? Then we'll straight away start with this array of 2 isotropic point sources, right? So before that, right, I hope you all are comfortable, right? You know what is power theorem, radiation intensity, power pattern, again finding directivity, gain all those steps you know now, right? So we don't want to bother about that. So already by the time you finish third module, almost 25% of the module 4 you have finished, right? Okay, now before that I have to tell what is point source, right? What is a point source? Then we'll move on to array of point source, right? Array of point source. So array of 2 isotropic point source, then we have pattern multiplication and linear array of n isotropic point source in general. So this is the first part, and second part is about actually what electric dipoles. In this part, right, we will in detail discuss about what is the current distribution along a line and how radiation happens, right? Maybe taking an oscillating current element as an example, I'll explain how radiation happens, right? Then maybe the short electric dipole, the field components of that, radiation resistance of short electric dipole, right? Then radiation resistance of lambda by 2 dipole, effective aperture, all those things will derive. So that is what is our plan, right? So we can finish it before our internal. That's what I guess, right? So that is about module 4, right? So before we start with, I have to tell you what is a point source. You know what is a point source? I don't have to tell that, right? Suppose you have an antenna of some dimension, right? And if I consider this as actually what a boundary of it, right? If you consider a very large distance, right? If you consider a very large distance, you can assume the power is actually what emanating radially outwards from this antenna, right? And if you right interpolate this to the center of the antenna, so you can see the power is radiating from a point, say O, which is actually what the center of the antenna. It need not always be center of the antenna, physical center of the antenna, but when you observe the power radiated from an antenna, right, and if you try to extend it towards the center, it will meet at some point, right? So in far field, right, and if the distance r is much large compared to actually what dimension of the antenna L, right, much large compared to dimension of the antenna of L, that is L, then we can assume the antenna to be a point source. We can assume the antenna to be a point source which is confined to a single point, and that point is radiating the electromagnetic field. So we can assume like that. So we'll be assuming in this case antenna as a point source, right? Antenna as a point source, and we'll be confining our discussion, right? We'll be confining our discussion of first part of this module to isotropic point source. Isotropic point source, right? So what is isotropic point source? It's an isotropic source which is actually what a volumeless source which radiates in all direction, right? So, and why we are interested in this isotropic point sources, any antenna and its radiation pattern can be obtained as actually what a radiation pattern of array of isotropic point sources. So you know what is a point source. So we'll be dealing antenna as a point source in this particular module, right? And particularly actually what isotropic point sources. We'll be studying about array of isotropic point sources. That is the first topic which we are going to learn. As per this, right, we are going to start with arrays of 2 isotropic point sources, right? So I'll start with that, right? Arrays of right, arrays of 2 isotropic point sources. So right, so I'll just tell you what is the system we are considering here, right? So say we have, say this is x-axis and say this is actually what y-axis, right? I have 2 point sources, right? I have 2 point sources separated by some distance d, right? I have 2 point sources separated by some distance d, right? And I need to find at any given point, right? At any given point, right? At any given point P, which is at an angle phi, sorry, from x-axis and a distance r from the origin, right? So this is origin, right? So 2 point sources, source 1 and source 2, right, are kept at a distance d from each other and it is centered at origin. It's centered at origin, right? This is origin, right? And I need to find at any given point P, right? At any given point P, which is at an angle of phi. Phi is nothing but what I'm considering it only in a plane, right? This is x-axis, and angle phi is measured in anti-clockwise sense from x-axis, right? So this is phi equal to 0. This is phi equal to 90 degree. This is phi equal to 180 degree. Phi equal to 270 degree, and phi equal to 360 again. So at any given point, what will be the radiation? And I am assuming these two sources are actually what fed with some magnitude and phase, right? If only one source is there, if you consider only one source, right, at some distance r, at a given distance r, it will have a field E, right? It will produce a electric field E, right? And so what we have to see is, so these two will be radiating, right? If these two will be radiating, they will be producing, say this is producing field E1 and this two is producing field E2, right? At this point, right? So at this point, the total field E will be actually what? Vector sum of field E1 plus field E2, right? So we can have different cases, right? For instance, right, two sources, right? So case A can be two sources having same magnitude and phase, right? Same magnitude and phase. That is one case, right? And another case can be same magnitude but opposite phase, right? Another case can be same magnitude and phase quadrature and pi by 2 phase difference, right? And it can be actually what? Different magnitude. So these things we have to different magnitudes and phase, right? So this is a more general case and phase. So these things we have to study. So basically what we are going to, I won't start it today, right? So what we will be doing is, right, we have two radiators, say S1 and S2, separated by some distance. This distance D can be anything, right? So as you vary the distance, of course the field will change. We have seen that, right, in Thomas Ring's double slit experiment, right? And of course, right, and the pattern, right, these two may have some pattern. The pattern can be actually radiation pattern, can be something like this, right? That pattern depends upon, right, in which directions the radiation from these antennas are getting added in phase, and the direction in which the radiation from these two antennas are getting added out of phase. Depending upon that, the radiation pattern will change, right? So now maybe to start with, right, maybe we'll I'll just tell the system model and stop today's session actually. Yeah, so we have, this is y-axis and this is x-axis, right? Antenna source 1 is there and source 2 is there. So this is source 1 and this is source 2, right? And if you consider some faraway point which is at a distance actually what? R, which is at a distance R from the center, right? And if this is far field, what you can assume is this, rays of light are actually what? Assuming they are parallel to each other, right? We can assume the rays of light are parallel to each other. Separation between them is actually what? If it is D, right? So the electromagnetic wave which is radiated by the source S2 has to travel only this much distance. If you consider actually what? Right, this is actually what? Point P, right? This is point P, and we can assume at point P the rays from S1 and S2 are reaching almost parallel, but of course you can see the radiation from S2, right, and S1, they travel different lengths, right? So they travel different lengths. So this much additional length the radiation from S1 has to travel for it to reach the point P, right? So this is the path difference. I can tell this is the path difference, right? Otherwise the electric field intensity magnitude is the same, right? If magnitude is same, right, there will be phase difference due to path difference, right? Phase difference due to path difference. It's like actually what our double slit experiment. Two slits are there, right? Both are radiating same frequency, same phase, everything. But as the path length is different, right, there will be constructive or destructive interference, right? So what will be that? That is what we are going to see next. So this angle is phi, this angle is phi, so this angle is also phi, right? So this distance is d by 2. This distance is actually what? D by 2. If you consider origin as reference, how to represent this electric field intensity at some distance, right? That is our question, right? How to do that? We'll do it in next class. So it's somewhat similar to what we have seen today, Young's double slit experiment. So we have two sources. How can I come up with a general expression of the radiation field intensity as a function of r and phi? That is the question, right? So we'll do it in next class. For today only that much, right? We'll wind up there, right? And before we conclude, I just wanted to right, in the last video which I posted, right, and in the last video which I posted in YouTube, there was a small error, right, a small mistake which I made. That was on say the effective height, right? Effective height, HE, you know, it is actually what? I average by I naught times physical height, right? So I told this is true, but I have written a general expression. So where I average will be, right? I average will be, so suppose you have some antenna, right? Suppose you have some antenna and it has some current distribution, some random current distribution, right? So this is placed along Z axis and the current distribution is I of Z. I don't know what is the current distribution. In the cases which we have seen, one was sinusoid and other one was linear, right? But some random current distribution I of Z I have, and this is from Z equal to 0 to HP, right? So it is placed from Z equal to 0 to HP if you assume, right? What will be the average current? Current is a function of Z. The average current can be found out. Average current distribution means at different points of the antenna current is different, but if you integrate it and divide it with actually what total length of this antenna, you will get average current. So to find average current, what you should do is you should integrate the actual current from Z from 0 to HP, right? That is I of Z dz, and you should divide it with HP. So then it's actually what you are adding up current at each and every point, right? Then you are dividing it with total length. It's just like how you will average different marks. So as it is continuous, instead of summation, it is actually what? Integration. So this is I average, right? This is I average, right? And so what will be HE now? What will be HE now? Effective height can be written as, right? Effective height can be written as HE is equal to, right? It is I average by I naught. I average by I naught is actually what? 1 by HP times integral Z from 0 to HP I of Z dz. This is actually what? I average divided by I naught times HP. So what will happen is this HP and this HP will get cancelled. So I can write effective height as, right? I can write effective height as HE is equal to 1 by I naught integral Z from 0 to HP I of Z dz, right? 1 by, right? So this is the correct expression, right? Last time what I did is, right, I missed out this 1 by HP, right? I missed out this 1 by HP in the average current expression. So I have just as a right, correct. I just corrected it in video. I was just in one slide actually what I was just showing. There is a correction. Did anyone see the video? That video, did anyone see? So
Yes, sir, I have seen.
I have mentioned that correction.
Even that note was there, no, sir. I have seen both.
Yeah, I put a note, right? So yeah, in note also I have put, and but I just wanted to clarify that, right? that HP it gets cancelled, right? So in note also I mentioned that, right? So please refer that. That's what I had to tell. So in next class we'll start with module 4. It's really interesting, right? It's very fun. Module 4. It's like say a Young's double slit experiment. We have different cases, and for that we have to find the field intensity, right? We'll find in which position we'll have maxima, which position we'll have minima, right? And we'll try to plot the pattern, and finally, right, we'll extend it to array of n sources, and we'll study a little bit of field synthesis, right? If you want to have a given pattern, how can you synthesize it using array of isotropic sources? That actually what gives principle of pattern multiplication, right? And field synthesis little bit, right? We'll see. Yeah, that's it for today's session. If any doubt, you may please ask. Otherwise, we'll wind up here. Thank you. Right. So today we didn't discuss much, but it's okay. That much is sufficient today. Right. One small break. Anyhow, I didn't tell you it was fourth module. Without even telling you, I started fourth module. I finished some of the portions in third module. Right. So you have a right to take a little bit of break today. So tomorrow's session we'll start with module 4. Thank you. Yeah. If any doubt is there, you can stay back and ask me. Otherwise, you can leave. That's it.